A cooperation and non-aggression pact with the Jews. Soon after emigrating to Medina and making sure that the pillars of the new Islamic community were well established on strong bases of administrative, political, and ideological unity, the Prophet, peace be upon him, commenced to establish regular and clearly defined relations with non-Muslims. All of these efforts were exerted solely to provide peace, security, and prosperity to all mankind at large, and to bring about a spirit of rapport and harmony within his region. In particular, geographically, the closest people to Medina were the Jews. Whilst harboring evil intentions and nursing bitter grudge, they showed not the least resistance nor the slightest animosity. The Prophet decided to ratify a treaty with them with clauses that provided full freedom in faith and wealth. He had no intention whatsoever of following severe policies involving banishment, seizure of wealth, and land or hostility. The treaty came within the context of another one of a larger framework relating to inter-Muslim relationships. The most important provisions of the treaty are the following. 1. The Jews of Bani Auf are one community with the believers. The Jews will profess their religion and the Muslims theirs. 2. The Jews shall be responsible for their expenditure and the Muslims for theirs. 3. If attacked by a third party, each shall come to the assistance of the other. 4. Each party shall hold counsel with the other. Mutual relation shall be founded on righteousness. Sin is totally excluded. 5. Neither shall commit sins to the prejudice of the other. 6. The wronged party shall be aided. 7. The Jews shall contribute to the cost of war so long as they are fighting alongside the believers. 8. Medina shall remain sacred and inviolable for all that join this treaty. 9. Should any disagreement arise between the signatories to this treaty, then Allah, the All-High, and His Messenger shall settle the dispute. The signatories to this treaty shall boycott Quraysh commercially. They shall also abstain from extending any support to them. 11th, each shall contribute to defending Medina in case of a foreign attack in its respective area. 12. This treaty shall not hinder either party from seeking lawful revenge. Medina and its suburbs, after the ratification of this treaty, turned into a coalition state, with Medina proper as capital and Muhammad, peace be upon him, as president. Authorities lay mainly in the hand of the Muslims, and consequently, it was a real capital of Islam. To expand the zone of peace and security, the Prophet, peace be upon him, started to enter into similar treaties with other tribes living around his state. The Prophet on the battlefield. The Qurayshites, mortified at the escape of the Prophet, peace be upon him, along with his devoted companions, and jealous of his growing power in Medina, kept a stringent watch over the Muslims left behind and persecuted them in every possible way. They also initiated clandestine contacts with Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul, chief of Madanese polytheists, and president-designate of the tribes Dar-us and Khazraj before the Prophet's emigration. They sent him a strongly worded ultimatum ordering him to fight or expel the Prophet. Otherwise, they would launch a widespread military campaign that would exterminate his people and proscribe his women. His pride wounded and kingship no longer his, Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul, a priori responded positively to his Qurayshite co-polytheists. He mobilized his supporters to counteract the Muslims. The Prophet, peace be upon him, on hearing about this unholy alliance, summoned Abdullah and admonished him to be more sensible and thoughtful and cautioned his men against being snared in malicious tricks. The men, on grounds of cowardice or reason, gave up the idea. Their chief, however, seemingly complied. But at heart, he remained a wicked, unpredictable accomplice with Quraysh and the envious Jews. Skirmishes and provocations started to pave the way for a major confrontation between the Muslims and polytheists. Sa'd bin Mu'adh, an outstanding helper, announced his intention to observe Umrah, lesser pilgrimage, and headed for Makkah. There, Umayyah bin Khalaf provided tutelage for him to observe the ritual circumambulation. Abu Jahl, an arch-enemy of Islam, saw him in the sacred sanctuary and threatened he would have killed him if he had not been in the company of Umayyah. Sa'd fearlessly and defiantly challenged him to committing any folly at the risk of cutting their caravans off. Provocative actions continued, and Quraysh sent the Muslims a note threatening to put them to death in their own homeland. Those were not mere words, for the Prophet, peace be upon him, received information from reliable sources attesting to real intrigues and plots being hatched by the enemies of Islam. Precautionary measures were taken and a state of alertness was called for, including the positioning of security guards around the house of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and strategic junctures. Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, reported that Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, lay down on bed during one night on his arrival in Medina and said, "Were there a pious person from amongst my companions who should keep a watch for me during the night?" She, Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, said, "We were in this state when we heard the clanging noise of arms." He, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Who is it?" He said, "This is Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas." Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, said to him, "What brings you here?" Thereupon he said, "I harbored fear, lest any harm should come to Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him. So I came to serve as your sentinel." Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, invoked blessings upon him, and then he slept. This state of close vigilance continued ceaselessly until the words of Allah were revealed, saying, "Allah will protect you from mankind." 5.67. Here, the Prophet, peace be upon him, peeped from the dome of his house, asking his people to go away and making it clear that Allah would take the charge of protecting him. The Prophet's life was not the only target of the wicked schemes, but rather the lives and the whole entity of the Muslims. When the Madanese provided the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his companions with safe refuge, the desert Bedouins began to look at them all in the same perspective and outlawed all the Muslims. At this precarious juncture with Quraysh, intent on pursuing their aggressive and devilish plans, Allah, the All-High, gave the Muslims the permission to take arms against the disbelievers. Permission to fight is given to those, i.e. believers against those disbelievers, who are fighting them, and because they, believers, have been wronged, and surely Allah is able to give them, believers, victory. 22:39. This verse was revealed in a larger context of divine instructions to eradicate all aspects of falsehood and hold in honor the symbols and rights of Allah. Those Muslim rulers who, if we give them power in the land, they order for iqamat as-salat, i.e. to perform salat, prayer, the 5 compulsory congregational prayers, the males in mosques, to pay the zakat, obligatory charity, and they enjoin al-ma'ruf, i.e. Islamic monotheism and all that Islam orders one to do, and forbid al-munkar, i.e. disbelief, polytheism, and all that Islam has forbidden, i.e. they make the Quran as the law of their country in all the spheres of life. 22:41. Doubtlessly, the permission to fight was revealed in Medina after emigration, not in Makkah, still the exact date whereof is in doubt. The permission to fight was already there, But in the light of the status quo, it was wise for the Muslims to bring the commercial routes leading to Mecca under their control. To realize this strategic objective, the Prophet, peace be upon him, had to choose either of two options. 1. Entering into non-aggression pacts with the tribes inhabiting either the areas adjacent to the routes or between these routes and Medina. With respect to this course of action, the Prophet, peace be upon him, had already signed, together with the Jews and other neighboring tribes, the aforementioned pact of cooperation and good neighborliness. 2. Dispatching successive armed missions for harassment along the strategic commercial routes. Pre-Badr missions and invasions. With a view to implementing these plans, the Muslims commenced real military activities, which at first took the form of reconnaissance patrols delegated to explore the geopolitical features of the roads surrounding Medina and others leading to Mecca, and building alliances with the tribes nearby. The Prophet wanted to impress upon the polytheists and Jews of Medina, as well as the Bedouins in its vicinity, that the Muslims had smashed their old fears and had been too strong to be attacked with impunity. He also wanted to display the power of his followers in order to deter Quraysh from committing any military folly against him, which might jeopardize their economic life and means of living, and to stop them from persecuting the helpless Muslims detained in Mecca. Consequently, he would avail himself of this opportunity and resume his job of propagating the divine call freely. Before long, Allah again sent the Muslims a different sort of verses, whereby teaching them ways of fighting, urging them to go to war, and demonstrating relevant rules. So, when you meet, in fight, jihad in Allah's cause, those who disbelieve smite at their necks till when you have killed and wounded many of them, then bind a bond firmly on them, i.e., take them as captives. Thereafter is the time either for generosity, i.e., free them without ransom, or ransom, according to what benefits Islam, until the war lays down its burden. Thus, you are ordered by Allah to continue in carrying out jihad against the disbelievers till they embrace Islam, i.e., are saved from the punishment in the hellfire, or at least come under your protection. But if it had been Allah's will, He Himself could certainly have punished them without you. But He lets you fight in order to test you, some with others. But those who are killed in the way of Allah, He will never let their deeds be lost. He will guide them and set right their state, and admit them to paradise, which He has made known to them, i.e., they will know their places in paradise more than they used to know their houses in the world. O you who believe, if you help in the cause of Allah, He will help you and make your foothold firm. 47.4-7. Shortly afterwards, Allah began to dispraise the hypocrites, the weak at heart and cowardly elements. But when a decisive surah, explaining and ordering things, is sent down and fighting, jihad, the holy fighting, is mentioned, i.e., ordained therein, you will see those in whose hearts is a disease of hypocrisy, looking at you with a look of one fainting to death. 47:20. The prevalent exigencies required as a top priority, exhorting the Muslims to fight. Any leader with a deep insight would order his soldiers to get ready for any sort of emergency, let alone the all-knowing exalted Lord, who is at all times omniscient of the minutest details of affairs. The event of that skirmish with the polytheists dealt a heavy blow to the pride of Quraysh and created a sort of horrible restlessness amongst them. The aforementioned Quranic verses, enjoining the Muslims to strive in the cause of Allah, betrayed the proximity of blood clashes that would be crowned by a decisive victory for the Muslims and final expulsion of polytheists out of the sacred city, Mecca. They referred to rules pertinent to the treatment of captives and slaughtering the pagan soldiers till the war ended and laid down its burdens. All of these could act as clues to a final triumph that would envelop the strife of the Muslims towards their noble objectives. Another event of great significance featured the same month Shaban 2 AH, i.e. February 624 AD, which was a divine injunction ordering that Al-Qibla be changed from Jerusalem to the sacred mosque in Mecca. That was of a great advantage to the Muslims at two levels. First, it brought about a kind of social sifting, so to speak, in terms of the hypocrites of the Jews and others weak at heart, and revealed their true nature and inclinations. The ranks of the Muslims were thereby purged from those discord-prone elements. Second, facing a new Qibla, the sacred mosque in Mecca, refers gently to a new role awaiting the Muslims to take up, and would start only after the repatriation of the Muslims to their sacred city, Mecca. For it is not logical for the Muslims to leave their Qibla at the mercy of non-Muslims. The Muslims, therefore, at the behest of Allah and on account of those divine clues, augmented their activities, and their tendency towards striving in the cause of Allah and encountering His enemies in a decisive battle were greatly intensified.